What's going on, everybody? I'm Max Ralph.
Seth Engle.
This is the 1-0 podcast coming at you with some Northwestern quick picks and a quick Central Michigan recap. But some good news. We're excited to welcome aboard Ocean State Job Lot as the very first executive sponsor of the 1-0 podcast. Ocean State Job Lot is your new favorite discount store that's now open in State College. You can find almost anything there at a ridiculously good price. They've got everything from hoodies to pajama pants to stuff you need for your dorm, like laundry detergent, body wash, even batteries. Their snack selection, also on point, got to say. Need a pop-up tent for a tailgate, portable grill. Ocean State Job Lot is your tailgate headquarters. They also take Lion Cash. Make sure to head on down to Ocean State Job Lot and see their great prices on clothing, food, life essentials for yourself. It's just a 5-minute drive from campus. And make sure to check out their website at oceanstatejoblot.com. Yeah, big thanks to Ocean State Job Lot for sponsoring us. But with that said, we're gonna get into it. Seth, this is Northwestern week. It is the official open of Big Ten only conference play. It's also the week before the bye week. There's kind of a lot of things that go into this week. But the one thing that I've noticed is that Northwestern has had a really funny start to its season. The Wildcats are 1-3, but they're also tied for first in the Big Ten West because they beat Nebraska, which is funny in itself because they've also lost to Miami, Ohio and Southern Illinois. So it's quite a team we have coming into Beaver Stadium this weekend. But just some quick notes on that before we talk a little bit about what happened last week in Central Michigan.
Yeah, Northwestern's a really interesting team to evaluate, particularly because, one, they started with a Big Ten win and then dropped 3 non-conference games the next 3 weeks. They don't do a lot of things particularly well, except for their offensive line. They're not necessarily a terrible team overall. They have pieces, they have weapons. Their problem after watching film has really been just putting it all together when it matters most. They have a big problem with holding on to the football. They turn the ball over a lot. Ryan Helinski has already thrown 3 interceptions this year. They fumble a ton. Those are the kind of things that have allowed Miami, Ohio to beat them, that have allowed Southern Illinois to beat them. And those are just the things that you can't allow against one of the best defenses in the country, which is Penn State. So that's my initial thoughts on Northwestern. Going back to Central Michigan, I don't think it said so much. I don't think it really, I don't know. It didn't really tell anything about this team. I think it's a game that most people are probably going to forget about when it's all said and done. A win's a win. That's kind of how I view this game. I don't know if you feel the same way there.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I mean, at the end of the day, it is a win's a win. People have been like, oh, Penn State only won by 19 points against Central Michigan. But it's like, I don't know. I feel like Penn State tried to do some things that it hasn't done all year and, rotated guys in even earlier than they have been. Right. And we kind of talked about it in our rapid reaction right after the game. It was just like Penn State was kind of playing with its food a lot. A 19-point win is still a 19-point win. I mean, Penn State didn't cover, but it wasn't like that game was ever in jeopardy for Penn State. So I don't know. I don't really think there's a whole lot to even really take away from Central Michigan, aside from maybe the fact that Katron Allen is maybe just as good as Nick Singleton in a different way. He was incredibly impressive that day. And I mean, once again, like Sean Clifford, limited mistakes, and the defense, another 4 turnovers. Like I think, as you mentioned, Northwestern is a team that has flashed. I watched pretty much that whole game against Nebraska in week 0. And, we didn't know Nebraska had as many issues as it did back then, but, the Northwestern offense looked pretty good. And the problem is they keep turning the ball over, and Penn State has already shown it's a team that has a very high propensity for turning the ball over. So I would be worried if I was Northwestern coming in here playing against that Penn State secondary. But you mentioned the offensive line, and I got the boy Peter Skoronsky behind me right here. He is a future first-round offensive tackle. I'm excited to watch him go up against these Penn State defensive ends, especially Adisa Isaac and Chop Robinson. That should be good football to be watching. But yeah, I don't like a lot with Northwestern this weekend against Penn State.
Yeah, and you mentioned Skoronski, who is just far and away the best player on that team.
Mhm.
Um, it was interesting yesterday. I asked Franklin about preparing for him because he was actually recruited as a former five-star recruit to Penn State.
Yeah.
Ended up going to Northwestern, so they're at least a little familiar with their film.
Mhm.
But Franklin said it's challenging to evaluate him because of the way that Northwestern runs their offense, where they chip block like all the time.
Yeah.
So a lot of the time, it's like a running back or a tight end who's taking that block instead of Skoronski. And he said, well, maybe they don't even need to be doing that because this guy is that talented.
Yeah.
Um, as for run blocking, I mean, Evan Hull is one of the best running backs in the Big Ten. That's really
Yeah.
no doubt.
Yeah.
He
He's put
was
a lot of good stuff on film.
right. He was over 1,000 yards last year. And he's on his way there again this year.
Mhm.
Malik Washington's another guy to look for. He's the slot receiver, number 6. He's small, 5'9", but he's really lengthy.
Mhm.
He can catch a football, but he too has struggled a lot with holding on to the ball.
Should be an interesting matchup. Could be a day for Daquan Hardy to kind of shine. I said it after the Purdue game, I think, but Daquan is like one of the most underrated players on the Penn State roster, and he's been kind of quiet the past few weeks. Those guys on the edge have gotten more hype just because of the plays, Kalen King and Johnny Dixon. But I still love watching Daquan Hardy play, so that could be interesting. But yeah, Evan Hall is a good running back, and he's got a decent offensive line in front of him. It'll be another chance for Penn State to prove that it can stop the run well, just like it did against Auburn, just like it did against Central Michigan. Bottom line is, this is just another tune-up game, if you ask me. I mean, it is the start of Big Ten play, but it's like, so what? The only other interesting thing about this game is that it comes right before the bye week, and then Penn State just has a horrid month of October ahead of it when as soon as you come out of the bye week, you go on the road to the big house to play Michigan, which is number 4 in the country right now. And then you come back home for the whiteout against Minnesota, and then you have another game at home against Ohio State. All 3 teams undefeated, all 3 teams ranked right now. This is an important tune-up for Penn State, more so than Central Michigan, more so than Ohio, because you want to be confident that your starters can go out there, play 2 quarters, get you a lead, and then just be done. Give those guys almost 2 full weeks of rest before they have to play against that gauntlet. And you also want to be able to have Drew Aller. You want those second team receivers. You want those second team defensive backs, defensive linemen. You want those guys playing a lot this weekend. I mean, because you want them to be able to be ready to play in a Big Ten environment when they go to Michigan, when they play Minnesota, when they play Ohio State. I mean,
And that's been Franklin's plan too. I mean, it hasn't necessarily gone that way in those games against Ohio and Central Michigan, where he's planned for Aller to come in the second quarter. I mean, I think the goal is the same. Where I mean,
I
that's where you
agree.
want to put them in.
Yeah.
It just hasn't necessarily been like the blowout they would have wanted that early in the game. I
Yeah.
think they're gonna try to do that. I mean,
I agree. I think the difference this week is that Penn State's not going to mess around. Like
yeah,
they played with their food against Central Michigan and had a tie football game in the second quarter. I don't think that's going to happen because this week more than ever, you really need those young guys to get experience early in this game.
exactly. Yeah, and then also you mentioned the bye week, which I think is going to be so important.
Mm-hmm.
Franklin's talked about it a little bit leading up to it. There are going to be some changes this year.
Yeah.
I've gotten some questions on Twitter about it. Just like what is changing or how have things gone before?
Mm-hmm.
Basically, the bye week is like a balance of a ton of things. One, you want to get rest. It's technically a week off from the lengthy season, right before the bulk of Big Ten play. But also it's a time for recruiting. Coaches go on the road and recruit. And it's also a time where you prepare for future opponents.
Yeah.
Penn State has their 3 toughest opponents right off the bye week.
Mm-hmm.
So they kind of have to put more of an emphasis on those future opponents, watching more film. They're even adding another day of practice. It's not necessarily a physical practice. Franklin described it as more of a mental practice, but it's still a full day of practice that they didn't have before.
Yeah.
Those are big changes. And Franklin hasn't necessarily performed too well off the buys. In his tenure at Penn State. I think that doing this could show, some positives.
Yeah, I mean, after the bye week last year was a historic 9 overtime loss to Illinois
Yeah.
when Sean Clifford was not healthy and Taquan Roberson nor Christian Veilleux were very clearly, neither of them were ready to play against Illinois. Sean shouldn't have played against Illinois. So, like you said, the track record is not great. And going up to Michigan, going to the big house right after the bye week is going to be an incredibly important game for James Franklin and this Penn State team for them to reach the goals that they have this year. I mean, so far this first part of the season's gone really well, and this is going to be really pivotal. But let's go into score predictions. Let's wrap this up. Dude, picking these games is just like a crapshoot. I don't know. I just randomly said like 39-13 Penn State. I was like, okay, score 4 touchdowns and kick 3 field goals. And then I'm just really rooting for a safety because Barney Amore has been so good. And like, I want to see the ball get put on the 1 yard line and Penn State come away with a safety just because I think it'll be fun. And yeah. I like Barney deserves that credit because he's awesome. And so, hey, guess what? I'm going to predict a safety this week.
Didn't they have a safety a couple weeks ago? I think they had one at Auburn.
Did they?
Maybe they have one this year, and I think they almost got another too. Special teams has been that good.
My brain may be failing me, but like, yeah, Barney has been absolutely legit. So I'll go for one this week. But yeah, they did not have a safety against Auburn. I didn't think so. But
they had one this year at some point. It was like the first one they've had in a while.
They had one against Ohio.
Was it Ohio?
Yep, okay. It was Ohio. Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. I'm going to predict another one, but 39-13 Penn State.
Yeah. So, I mean, mine's around there. I predicted 52-7 last week. I just go out there and like plug some numbers and I'm like, oh, if it hits, it hits. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Right. This week, I'm a little more confident with a Penn State 40, Northwestern 10. I don't know. Northwestern could potentially score more. The offense isn't terrible.
Right.
Like it's really not, but like Penn State's defense is also it is a mismatch there. I think Penn State's going to run all over them. Northwestern gives up the second most rushing yards in the Big Ten.
Yep.
Right after Nebraska, of course.
Yep.
I expect big things out of Nick Singleton after not performing up to his previous games last week. Katron Allen's going to get some big touches as well. Should be a big game for the running backs.
Yep. Yeah. And also we got a couple of comments on the pod last week asking about Keziah Izzard and Smith Vilbert. This week, James Franklin mentioned that Smith Vilbert is just not available. Don't really know what it is. He's been
going to sit him down though. He's going to sit him down and they're going to have a conversation about something.
Right. Yeah. Which leads me to believe it's not injury related. I mean, it's not injury related. He's been practicing. Yeah. So, and Izzard, we have even less of an idea what's going on there.
We kind of know now. Franklin said he is hoping that he will be active on Saturday.
Yeah. So maybe Izzard is injury related, but that's not something James Franklin's ever gonna.
He's been practicing too. Yeah. So I mean, and Hunter Norzad. Yep. Right. So no, is Izzard, it's possible that he plays. Norzad, he's hopeful.
Yeah. Norzad dressed last week, but did not play.
Yeah, Norzad is injury related. It's not like an injury. Yes. But he's got bumps and bruises. So that's for an update.
He had crazy tape on his ankles, both of them last week and in Auburn. So
it's an adjustment. It's an adjustment going from the Ivy League to the Big Ten. It's a little different.
Somebody asked if we actually read comments, and we do. So if you got questions, leave them for us. But that's it for us. I got 39-13 Penn State this weekend. Thanks for watching. Shout out Ocean State Job Lot, and keep following with us at collegian.psu.edu and on Twitter at PSU Footblog and 1-0 Pod. Peace.